Good afternoon. Thank you, folks, for joining us. It's May 20th, 2021. We're here in Honolulu. We've got with us the absolutely amazing group of Tina Patterson in Germantown, Maryland, with Maryland's most beautiful beach right behind her. Uh, no photoshopping involved at all. A little virtual background, maybe. And Tina continues to add to her honors this week, reappointment to a very important planning group and commission in Maryland with responsibility for parks and other community areas adds to that list, which is getting pretty voluminous for this year. Tina, though, is here individually, not as a planning commissioner. We're careful about that because some people apparently have sensitivity about the capacities in which we appear. I'm a little bit more sensitive about the incapacity with which I appear. But, we also have Rebekah Ratliff, just an absolutely amazing lady, mediator, arbitrator, and Jacqueline of many trades. And Ben Davis, recently retired from the University of Toledo College of Law, honoree by the American Bar Association section of dispute resolution with its highest award for 2021, the D'Alembert Raven Award for outstanding service in conflict resolution. Ben, by the way, succeeds the equally preeminent Homer LaRue, who received that award last year. So we're on a roll. I think they're going to have a really challenging time trying to find somebody up at Homer's and Ben's level for next year. But I wouldn't rule out either Tina or Rebekah. It's about time for a non-lawyer to get awarded an honor.
Well, that's very generous of you. I'm not so certain about that, though.
that Chuck Crumpton is, I'm hearing stuff.
I hope
now
not.
That's a reality. Now that is a reality. Absolutely.
Definitely.
I'm aiming for a low profile.
I think those days are over. If you're here on ThinkTech Hawaii, yeah, no low profile, sir.
Okay. Moving target below the radar screen is the hardest one to hit, right? So can't hit what you can't see. So speaking of what we do see, Brother Ben, you raised a couple of concerns where we might not expect them to happen with high degree holding people in academia who are behaving in ways that might not reflect that level of intelligence or even common sense. What was your example?
Well, I just saw yesterday on a blog, tax profs blog, which I guess was tax lawyer types, that there was a hubbub being put out about a woman named Harry Ozofsky, who's currently the dean at Penn State University, who has just been, I guess, foreseen or going to being appointed or going to be appointed as dean at Northwestern. Obviously, a very prestigious position and all that. And what happened is that somebody wrote an anonymous note basically saying that they're trying to force a critical race theory woke dean on us here at Northwestern, and we're trying to resist it. And then there are a couple other people who wrote things kind of related to it. I call those like digital influence spaces, where you got a few people start writing a thing and putting it in different places. But the thing that really bothered me about it is that first, the person who wrote the anonymous thing, to me, shows a complete lack of courage to actually put their name on what they're saying, that's casting aspersions against, really, I think, slurring her in the context. And secondly, that they'd even do it is really demeans legal education. I mean, there may be battles within a faculty or a university about who gets to be the dean and all that. But to put that kind of stuff out like that, to try to undermine somebody who is obviously a very well qualified candidate, easily could get the job as a reasonable person, and just to put, just throw mud at him is, I think, so beneath legal education that I ended up writing on a listserv about it, saying, not right. And I also wrote that, Harry, keep your powder dry because there's like crazies out there. And I'm sensitive maybe to this because I think about all the young scholars who are in legal education pre-tenure who are told to trim their sails or, keep your head down or something like that. And they avoid for fear of some senior faculty member who's going to throw the weight around at the time of tenure. And this kind of effort, I think, is really awful. Another thing they criticize is that when she was dean at Penn State, after the George Floyd thing, wrote a letter, and asked for support, condemning all that stuff and speaking to systemic racism and all that. And they said that's not appropriate for a dean, and it creates orthodoxy at the school and all that. And, I was like, wait a minute. I have never seen when deans have been trying to herd their faculties that anything the dean said would cause the faculty to think a certain way or any member of the faculty to change whatever they're writing. Sorry, dean, I'm sorry. And really, it looked more like a projection by someone who's senior faculty of what senior faculty can potentially do to juniors by, basically scaring them out of writing what they think because the senior faculty will throw their weight around at tenure time, and it's really ugly, and it needed to be called out. So that's what I tried to do.
And interesting that you bring that up because Harry Yashofsky's successor at Penn State Dickinson, Danielle Conway, who has appeared on this show several times and is just absolutely preeminent, a wonderful, wonderful leader in law, in education, and previously professor here at the law school in Hawaii, has now put together a group with the blessing of not just the law school, but the university for formulating and instituting an anti-racism curriculum in the law school. So Harry Yashofsky's prescient wisdom is actually getting put into practice for those naysayers out there.
Yeah.
This kind of thing is happening, and the last 4 years may be feeding and nurturing it, because in North Carolina, we have a Nobel Prize winner who was reviewed for tenure by the tenure committee and the faculty for months. Very, very detailed. The CIA would envy that level of digging and vetting. And they recommended her without reservations of any kind. And she just got denied tenure because someone undisclosed in the administration has brought about that denial of tenure. As you say, this is an embarrassment, not just for the institution, but for academia generally. We're supposed to be the model of reasoned, balanced civil discourse, not of ad hominem personal attacks that are anonymous. Although one of the late night talk show hosts has speculated that a handwriting expert has suggested that the handwriting on that note resembled that of Kevin McCarthy. We don't know if that's true. Not anonymous, probably someone who should be.
That's perfect.
Okay, Tina, Rebekah, your thoughts on what's going on here? What's behind this?
Well, Chuck, this is really part of a larger discussion, or just the latest episode in dismantling racism and systemic racism that we see in educational institutions. There are institutions that have been told, and since we're talking about the law community, law schools that have been told, you may have diversity in terms of ideology amongst your staff, your faculty, but you do not have racial and ethnic diversity in your staff, and you need to have that if you want to get the rating that you want. And instead, what we see is a long drawn out process. We can't find qualified candidates to fill this position. There's a plethora of individuals who are not only qualified but also knowledgeable that could serve in this capacity. It's really a matter of, do you want that voice to be part of your campus? At the same time, students are saying, we need to hear from and see diverse instructors, professors, and deans at our institutions. I recently had a conversation with an individual who was saying to me that he's an instructor. And I commented that my first interaction with a Black male instructor was when I was in college.
Yep.
So again, it's all about the systemic racism. It's fine to be adjunct, but it's not so fine to be tenured because now there's an additional obligation and responsibility to the organization, but also you are saying you are supporting that person's efforts. And it's really part of a larger discussion. Students are speaking up, but especially in the law community, these are the individuals that are going to be judges. These are the individuals that are going to be representing clients in the not too distant future. And if they are still hearing that a certain segment of the population is not worthy of being represented or should deserve lesser treatment, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And we are, and we're not seeing, even at the highest levels of academia, the kind of civil dialogue of critical thinking exchanges to be truth seeking. Instead, we're seeing a reflection of what politicians and political leaders at their worst have exemplified for the last 4 years on both sides. It
It is.
personal attacks.
That's right. It, as Tina is saying, and we all know, it's built in, baked in bias. And when we say structure, when we say systemic, we mean structural. It is long standing. It is historic. It is a system that Tina said it best. It's really deserves dismantling, and it's baby steps. We're going through baby steps because, of course, at the highest levels of government, we haven't seen support in our systems for advancement. So those of us who are fighting for the advancement and progress, take a few steps back as we move forward in the fight.
Well,
Chuck, go ahead.
No, go, Tina, please go ahead.
Hearing this conversation makes me think about a conversation that took place about a year ago, and Dwayne Morris law firm spearheaded it, which was Black lawyering in America. And people were surprised and taken aback to hear that, and the American Bar Association, to its credit, wrote a report over 5 years ago that said, the group that has the most attrition is Black female lawyers. They generally stay at a firm a year, year and a half, and then they leave. And they're not leaving because they don't like law. They're leaving because they're not being provided the support to thrive and grow. Again, it's about this dismantling. And Rebekah, I agree with you. Baby steps, but we've been having baby steps for 25 years. Okay,
400 years.
And all of us know and have heard of someone who was the first in their law school, woman, male, Black. But we're still seeing people who are serving as pioneers and holding that mantle, and they're tired. And it's time to get beyond allowing these people to be exhausted, burnt out, and tired, and saying, look, I'm an alum. You really want me to support you? You need to change. You need to change. It goes as far as even hiring a chief diversity officer. And I know that that's the latest trend, but we see academic institutions, and again, I'm going to focus on the law schools, where looking for a chief diversity officer is taking 15 months.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would like to express a little optimism here.
Please.
Because the reason is that today a magical thing has happened, which is that a English translation of a 1478 papal bull letter written by Pope Sixtus IV, which blessed and protected the Spanish Inquisition, has this letter in its entirety has been translated from the Latin into English for the first time in history. A guy down at the Library of Congress took it upon himself to translate when I was looking for a French or English version of it. And this is why it's significant, is because it is argued that that is the letter that started white supremacy. Because in blessing the differentiation of Jews and Moors in Spain at that time, that was part of distinguishing sort of white Europe from all the Moors had come up and all that, and starting that horrendous Spanish Inquisition that happened. And that is worth a read by itself, because you see how little we have progressed from 1478 to today. We talk about baby steps, and you look at a 550-year history, and you tie that up with a couple of other letters of popes who are basically blessing the perpetual enslavement of Africans that are in that same exact period. And, you say, my goodness, 150 years before 1619, this thing was being baked, okay? Let alone baked in. And now here we are at 550 years out. The other thing that why I'm positive about it is that in finding that, I found a certain amount of freedom. There I can point at this thing here, this clear thing here. Because I met James Meredith once, and James Meredith once told me that it was only when, after World War II, he was in Japan, that he realized that segregation was not ordained by God. He'd grown up in Mississippi. And it was when he worked in Japan that it came to him that, my goodness, this is not something that somehow God had put in place. So to find the instrument that seemed to be said in the name of God to lead to all the horrors that happened afterward, I found it liberating, because I realized that it's just a man-made thing. Now, I'm not being anti-Catholic here. I'm just being accurate in history, because people don't look at these primary sources. But I found it liberating to finally be able to read the awfulness of that moment and to see just how man-made this whole construct is over 550 years, and what we're up against as we fight against all the nonsense that people got baked into their heads. So that's the optimist. I hope it sounded optimistic. I don't know if it did, but to me, I was overjoyed today. This is the biggest thing that happened to me since, I don't know, retiring, I guess. Yeah, which was not too long ago either. But it really brings to me personally the sense of everyone I see and everyone who's got these crazy ideas, the kind of people who would make that decision in North Carolina, the kind of people who think they're making a right move with the kind of anonymous stuff we talked about, kind of people find it so hard to find somebody quote unquote qualified who's of color. They've all got up there in their heads this nonsense that's as older than the United States. And they don't even know they have it in their head. That's what's so heavy. Or some of them do and act on it, okay, but some of them just, like a guy told me he was talking with somebody who was 92 years old, an old white lady, and she said, well, what did you think about all this thing with blacks? He said, well, I just thought they were like that. It's like 92 years old, seeing the entire civil rights movement, and the view is that, blacks living in neighborhoods and the difficulties blacks in America have, they just thought that that's the way blacks were, that's the kind of craziness that's in this country sometimes.
Not that it was imposed. Not that it was imposed on black people.
No, I know. That's just how they were. You know what I mean? So, that's how they were. I was come on, man.
Yeah, you'll like this, Ben. James Meredith is my family, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, his wife is my godmother.
Oh, wonderful! Look at that. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yes, and I have been able to sit at his feet and listen to him talk about the University of Mississippi. Of course, we know he desegregated Ole Miss, and what his thoughts were. And he's written, I don't know how many books. And some of them really small pamphlet style books. But he's authored a lot of books about his life and his thoughts. And it's just been amazing to be able to really just literally sit and listen to him talk about what his thoughts were. And he has some very unconventional thoughts, very interesting.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, very interesting to listen to him speak. But he feels like all the experiences he went through, being shot, being stabbed, made him, he was Superman. He was the baddest, the baddest man on the planet, as he says it in one of his books. But yeah, it's, so people who have lived through those experiences, been pioneers, been at the forefront, been, historical figures. It's very interesting to hear now what they think about what we're seeing.
Right.
So
Well,
let me ask a question for all three of you.
Yeah.
If we surveyed 100 or 1,000 recent college and university graduates, what percentage of them do you think now would know who James Meredith was? And even
5%.
worse, what percentage of them do you believe would have read anything he wrote, as prolific as he was?
0. Maybe 1%.
I'm with Ben, 0 to 5%.
So the problem, exactly as Tina said, is systemic and it's intentional. And these things that we started talking about are racial, ethnic, class, caste, and discriminatory. And they are intentional and they are conscious and they're destructive and they are violent.
Yeah, they
We've
are.
got the first time in this country's history where our seat of government was under armed, violent attack at risk of life endangering violence. And you've got a very high proportion of leadership people on one side of the fence who are saying, hey, just another tourist visit.
Yeah, that's insanity. I mean, I think the Tim Ryan said it best. He says, we need two parties to make this country work, and we don't, and we only got one. And because the insanity, I mean, you can talk about it in terms of political moves and who's trying to keep Trump's support, whatever. I don't, you can all about that. You can do all that sort of political analysis, but for me, it's like anyone saying something that is not reality is kind of got a mental health issue of some kind, that they think they can get away with it and that we would somehow not have seen what we saw. I mean, there's even this one guy, a Representative Clyde, who was barricading a door. He was there with guns drawn officers yelling at them as to try to keep these people out. And he's saying that this was just a tourist thing today. I'm like, dude, what parts of your brain have been lobotomized in the past 3 months that you think you can possibly say that? And I'm probably insulting people who have got lobotomies by what I just said, because it's insane. It's not like a difference of opinion. It is pure insanity. And that is really troubling, that people are willing to sell their souls. Obviously, if you say this stuff, you get money, you get donors. Stefanik, that lady who just became the third in power on the Republican side as the ouster of Cheney happened. When she started singing The Big Lie, her donations went up 6-7-fold. So there's money out there willing to support this, because the more you destabilize the democracy, the less that gets happened and done, and the less the issues get addressed. And people are making money right now. They like making money like this, and they're happy with the craziness. I would like to add one other thing. 17 governors have said they're not taking the $300 of unemployment benefit that remain. How can you think that's a good idea when poor people, working class people, trying to make it? Except if you think that you're going to force people back to work, right? Well, the Reserve Army of the Poor idea is a kind of old, awful idea, okay? And really, what should happen is that the company should raise wages to attract these people so they do their numbers and it works. Or take the 300 and give it to child care services for all these people. Something like that. But they take it away. It's insane. Okay, I'm just going to say it like that. it's a level of insanity that is not in touch with reality. And it's not a civilized, developed country view.
And as we head into our last few minutes, it's not just insane, but isn't it also inhumane?
Oh, yes,
Same thing.
Absolutely.
absolutely. You know, the human hurt, the cruelty of it it's an abomination. I mean, people have been suffering through this pandemic, losing jobs, trying to keep, things together, let alone the mental health issues they have. And just a little bit of grace to people, right? Just a little bit of let me help you out a little as you can kind of get back on your feet. And no, you gotta stick it to them. It's just sick. It's sick. It's it's so sad.
And it's aimed at the institution that I think we've all talked about as the center of not just the middle class, but our society as a whole, which is the family.
Mhm.
We've got one group, one party that's attempting to nurture and help the family unit and the people in it survive with childcare tax credits, with vaccinations, with AIDS, with all kinds of things. And the other that's fighting that tooth and nail as
Yeah.
if there were
And
no such thing as family.
and
How can
what
that work?
I would
Our
also
last
like
couple of
to
minutes.
highlight one last thing, if I can add, is single parent families apparently get lost in the mix a little bit in all that stuff. And they need to adjust these things to make sure that single family parents are getting as much money as dual family parents for the children. It's not like the kid is cheaper just because it's a single family as opposed to two wage earners. You know what I mean? And there's things like that that are just sad that somebody didn't think of it. But fortunately, there are
Okay.
people like this Representative Porter who are pushing for that kind of adjustment being made.
So, Tina, Rebecca, in our last minute, parting thoughts?
Can believe your eyes is what I would say. All of these different narratives, but you can believe your eyes.
Yeah,
I think about the Gil Scott Heron song, the revolution will not be televised. It has been televised. And we saw it unfold, and it still continues to unfold. For those of you that are feeling weary, get your rest, but this journey's not over. Keep it moving.
here.
And what a great way to wrap this one up. This journey, too, is not over and still keeps moving. For those of you who appreciate and support ThinkTech, please remember this is fundraising month for ThinkTech. Please keep us in mind. Help us if and as you can. We'd like to stay connected with you, and you're the key to that, just as you are for public broadcasting. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Do come back.